We are. We are. Yeah. Good afternoon, members. Pnawn da pawb. I'd like to open this May hybrid meeting of Flinty County Council's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Richard Lloyd and I'll be chairing the meeting today. Can I welcome committee members, officers and members of the public and press and anyone watching on the Council's website. Planning Committee members in the chamber today, we have myself, Councillors Billy Mullen, Councillor Gladys Healy, Councillor Helen Brown, Paul Johnson, Chris Bithell, and the councillors online, we have Councillors Paul Cunningham, Adele Davis-Cook, Chris Dolphin, Andrew Parkhurst, Bill Crease, Sean Bibby, and Carol Ellis. Can I also just ask that the committee members just stay behind briefly at the end of the meeting today, as the Chief Officer for Place and Growth, David Fitzsimon, would like to provide us with some information regarding planning appeals. And now can I invite Matthew Parry Davis, the Service Manager for Development, to set out the principles of this hybrid meeting today. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a hybrid meeting and is being live streamed via the Council's website, and a recording of the live stream will be placed on the website as soon as possible, which is usually within 24 hours of this meeting. There are a mix of people speaking either in the chamber or joining online, and some of those have submitted a statement to be read out if they can't get to the meeting or lose connection, and I have copies of those to be read out at the appropriate time. In terms of process, the Chair will describe the item and then the case officer will present the application. Any late representations will then be read out if we have any. If we have any speakers to make third-party representations, either here in the chamber or joining online, they will be heard in the following order: a speaker against, a speaker for, a speaker from the town or community council, followed by the local ward member, and where appropriate, adjoining ward members. Currently, at this point, we accept a proposition from one of the members of the committee, then a seconder followed by any debate and any questions by members before the application is summed up by the proposer, and the vote is then taken by a show of hands. Members should note, however, that this reflects the current usual procedure followed by the committee. However, in relation to item 4 on today's agenda, there is a proposed amendment to the process for taking proposals, and therefore the point at which a recommendation is moved may change, subject to the agreement of the committee. For members, please remember to wait until you have heard the officer's presentation and all of the representations on an application before making any proposal. For those members joined online, you can use the virtual hand up if you want to make a proposal or raise a question, and the Chair will bring you in at the appropriate time. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Matthew. Okay, moved on to the agenda now. We have the first item is appointment of the Vice Chair for the Planning Committee. Do we have any proposals for Vice Chair, please? Councillor Johnson.
Could I propose Councillor Gladys Healy?
A seconder, please, for Councillor Bithell. Okay. Any other nominations for Vice Chair? No? Okay. Can I have a show of hands for Councillor Healy as Vice Chair, please? Any against? Abstentions? One abstention.
I'll abstain as well.
Oh, and Carol. Okay, thank you. Second item on the agenda is apologies. I think I've had 2 apologies. One is from Councillor Mike Pearce.
Sorry,
Yes, Adele, did you want to speak?
Apologies. Yes, I was abstaining.
Okay, second item is apologies. Had apologies from Councillor Mike Pearce and Councillor Alan Marshall. Don't think we've had any other apologies. We still do have 2 vacancies for this committee, which have been allocated to the Flinty People's Voice Group in the political balance, which was agreed at full council on the 12th of May. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest on the agenda today, please? Councillor Sam Swash.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to agenda item 9.2, I have a personal prejudicial interest, the nature of which is that my mother lives in a property adjoining the site. I have a dispensation from the Standards Committee which allows me to speak for 5 minutes and to answer any questions. I will then leave the room before any debate begins on the item.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swats. Thank you. Okay, any other declarations on online? Councillor Del Davis Cook, have you still got your hand up?
No, I haven't. No, I
All
haven't
right.
got my hand up.
Okay, you've gone green for the moment. Okay, agenda item 4 then. Proposed amendment to the taking of proposals to move a recommendation. I'll just bring Matthew in just to explain what the proposal is, and then we'll ask for a proposition and we'll vote on whether the committee are happy with it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And so, as I set out at the beginning, the order in which we take items at the moment is that a speaker against, a speaker for, speaker from the Town and Community Council, and then members will make representation. And currently at that point, a member of the committee will propose, will make a proposal on the agenda item. And then the members of the committee will debate it, and then it goes back to the proposer to summarise before the vote is taken. So to bring us in line with other local authorities and really what's best practice for planning committee is that we're proposing the point at which a member of the committee moves a recommendation would follow after any debate by the committee. So you would have the representations made by the various people, and then the matters would be debated by the committee. And then once that debate has reached a natural conclusion, then the committee will be asked if somebody wants to make a proposition, either in support of the recommendation or an alternative one, if appropriate. And then at that point, the committee will vote by way of a show of hands. So it's really just moving that where the proposal is made. So instead of before the debate, it would be after the debate. And that allows members to hear everything before they, excuse me, before they make a decision. It has been discussed with the Council's Chief Officer for Governance, and he has advised us that this is a matter for the committee to make. It doesn't need to go through full Council. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, this was a suggestion. I'm going to give a credit to Councillor Mike Pierce, actually, and I thought it was a good suggestion because in the past, when I've asked for a proposition, nobody's been willing to make one, so I've had to make one myself, really. So his suggestion was that sometimes you want to ask a few more questions before you want to make a proposition. I thought that was a good idea, so that's why it's come before the committee today. So questions can be asked to the officer can respond, and then at the end of that, I'll ask for a proposition then. So does anybody else want to yeah, anybody else? Sean, do you want to comment on this one?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a very sensible proposition that's been put in front of us. I think sometimes there is pressure placed for a proposition to be put on the table when I think some members need to hear more in the debate before they can come to a decision. I think sometimes propositions can be made premature. I think it's common sense, and I think Councillor Pearce is, very right to have suggested this, and I think personally I will be supporting the change.
Thank you, Councillor Bibby. Councillor Bithell. Okay. Anybody else want to speak on this before we go to a vote? I think it's a sensible idea. Okay, can we take a vote, please, on the slight change to the running order then of the committee? All in favour? I think that's unanimous. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we'll change now to the running order from on today's meeting. Okay, next item on the agenda is agenda item 5. That's late observations. We have some brief late observations with Matthew. Will read them out as we come to that item on the agenda. Agenda item 6 are the minutes To confirm it's correct read of the minutes of the meeting held on 11th of March 2026. Seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Well, we didn't meet in April. Just go through them a page at a time. Page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6 is blank. Can I have a mover, please, for the minutes? Councillor Bithwell. You probably move. Are you moving, Sean? Just nod your head. Yeah. And Councillor Healy was seconding. All in favour of them approving the minutes, please. Abstention from Councillor Brown, because I know she wasn't here. You weren't on it, sir. Thank you. Okay. Agenda item 7, urgent matters as agreed by the chair. We have no urgent matters to mention today. Agenda item 8 is items to be deferred. Presume we've got no items to be deferred today. Thank you. Agenda item 9 are reports of the Chief Officer Place and Growth. And the first item is agenda 9.1. That's a full application, the installation of replacement mechanical plant and associated fence enclosures at Aldi store, Broughton Shopping Park, Chester Road, Broughton. That was subject to a site visit on Monday. So I'll just bring in Steph Connor, please, to run through that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This application seeks consent to upgrade the existing plant machinery at Aldi, Broughton. This plant upgrade is part of a wider national project to upgrade Aldi's estate from HFC to CO2 refrigeration as part of legislation. This project is one of 72 in this year's rollout to produce more efficient machinery, which produces quieter noise levels. The plant machinery consists of a housed compressor pack, gas cooler, 3 air source heat pumps and 2 compressor packs. The only additional machinery will be the air source heat pumps. Sound screening by way of a 2.4 metre acoustic fence will be erected on both the south and west elevations in order to protect nearby residents of Simonstone Road and Vickers Way. No objections have been raised by the Community and Business Protection team in response to noise concerns.
You done? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Steph. Okay. Where are we up to? We have no late observations on this one. So the first speaker, I just want to bring in Matthew Parry-Davis in before I introduce the first speaker, because I have said I would allow slight recording of the machinery at present. So Matthew just wanted to make a comment on that, unless you wanted me to do it. Okay.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So we understand that the lady who's going to speak against the application has a recording that she wishes to play. It's around 10 seconds long, and the Chair's agreed for that to be played. But I want to advise the members that we've not heard it. We can't verify when it was taken or where it was taken. We can't verify, in fact, that it is where it's claimed to be coming from. So it's just to advise members that whilst the Chair has allowed that to be played, it hasn't been verified in any way by us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've got no reason to disbelieve Mrs. Richards on the recording, but as Matthew says, it hasn't been verified. So just bear that in mind. So Judith Richards, would you like to come up to a mic? And you have 3 minutes, including the recording. Okay. Yeah, I'd say there's no guarantee it will be heard online, but I'm quite willing to let you just play it. Okay. Yeah.
We are here to consider another retrospective planning application by Aldi after they failed.
Richard, sorry, do you want to sit down because you'll be a bit closer to the mic?
We are here to consider another retrospective planning application by Aldi after they failed to consult with neighbouring residents or obtain planning consent prior to starting works to replace refrigeration units. In 2018, retrospective planning consent was given after the store was built 20 feet closer to residential properties than agreed. Despite the store's new proximity to housing, Flintshire County Council failed to add enhanced soundproofing conditions to the consent. That decision has had a serious and ongoing impact on the homes close to the store. The main issue is the constant noise coming from the refrigeration units when they fire up. This affects residents throughout the day when fridge and freezer doors are being constantly opened and into the early hours of the morning when restocking is taking place. Aldi has known for years that this is causing distress, disruption and impacts on quality of life and home environment. Yet despite repeated attempts by neighbours to resolve the matter with Aldi, there's been little meaningful engagement and no resolution. The site visit was held at 10 a.m. when the store opens and did not accurately reflect the true level of noise experienced by residents. 10 a.m. is the quietest period for the refrigeration units as the fridge and freezer doors have not been opened, so the refrigeration units are not firing up. We all know our home fridges become noisier when the unit needs cooling down. Imagine this noise on an industrial scale. Aldi and the council have quoted average noise output figures for the new refrigeration units, but I will now play one of many sound recordings taken from my back door, which clearly shows the reality of the noise from the existing units when they are firing, noise that residents live with every day and was supposed to be well within reasonable parameters. This committee is minded to approve the application. We ask that the following conditions are imposed to genuinely protect local residents.
Just take a second. Just take a second.
One, that an acoustic fence that is several feet higher than the current or proposed fencing is installed around all sides of the refrigeration unit, as sound does not travel in a straight line. 2, that the existing screened bund of deciduous trees be properly enhanced with evergreen trees to provide year-round screening. 3, that a legally enforceable maintenance agreement to the bund is put in place. Finally, I must also raise concerns about fire safety and ongoing noise nuisance in the rear fire exit door, which is used by Aldi staff to exit the store for breaks. As the fire door cannot be opened from the outside, it remains open with the alarm sounding continuously throughout the day while staff take their breaks. This is unacceptable for nearby residents and breaches fire regulations, as fire doors by law should not be left open. We are simply asking Flintshire County Council to take measures to ensure that Aldi act responsibly, give local residents a point of contact and take reasonable steps to reduce the impact this store is having on the people who live in close proximity to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ritters. Thank you. Is he here? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a speaker 4. That's James Borley, who's the agent. And you have 3 minutes, James. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is James Borley, the agent of this planning application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application on behalf of Aldi. The purpose of this application is to upgrade the existing plant equipment at the Aldi Broughton store. This forms part of Aldi's wider national investment programme to modernise stores and transition from older hydrofluorocarbon refrigerant systems to eco-friendly CO2 refrigerant technology. Careful consideration has been given throughout the design process to protect residential amenity. Aldi has sought to respond positively and responsibly throughout this process by working with Flintshire County Council officers and neighbours and have proposed additional mitigation where appropriate. This has included providing 3 additional acoustic timber fences to border the 2 plant areas to further reduce noise levels at the nearest residential properties on Simonstone Road and Vickers Way. The new replacement plant proposed will be quieter, more environmentally friendly and more efficient than the existing plant. The submitted noise assessment demonstrates that the proposed new plant and acoustic mitigation complies with council guidance and British standards to ensure a low impact when noise from the proposed plant is at or below the background noise levels at the most affected noise-sensitive receptors. The predicted noise levels will be 10 decibels below background levels in the day and will not exceed the background noise levels at night. Furthermore, there have been no objections from pollution control, who conclude that the proposals will have no adverse impact on the nearest receptors. The proposals therefore comply with policies PC2 and EN18 of the local plan. In conclusion, this development complies with the local development plan and represents a clear overall betterment to the site, where the new replacement plant will be quieter than the existing plant and residential amenity will not be adversely impacted. For these reasons, we respectfully ask members to support the officer recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borley. Thank you. We have no speakers ready, but I'm going to just say to Councillor Mullen, do you want to speak as the local member, or do you want to come in as a member of the committee first? Because I'll bring you in first anyway. Yeah, you can speak now. If there are any questions you've got for the officer, you can bring them in now. Thanks.
The notes that I've got are with my proposal, if you know what I mean. So do you want me to just go through the notes and do the proposal later?
Yeah, proposal later. Sorry, proposal later because other members might wish to speak as well before the proposal. So you can bring all your notes in now, whatever you want to say.
Okay. Well, first of all, Chair, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank members of the committee for attending and officers attending the site visit on Monday. Aldi is one of our major food and goods outlets. The store here in Broughton, Buckley and Mould are well used by the public. I have concerns about this application. I have concerns about the mental health and the well-being of Mrs. Richards and her family. I feel that this application is to include conditions, mainly because of the proximity of Mrs. Richards' house and the store. Concerns about the bunded area in relation to the upkeep and the maintenance, planting and pruning through the autumn seasons, watering in the summer months have all gone by the by. I also have concerns about the height of the proposed fencing. I feel that it should be extended and it should be higher to mitigate the noise of the units being built. Some years ago, we had a member of the Aldi staff, a lady called Liz Bergnall, who worked with the residents and myself as the ward member to address areas of concern. Sadly, that has gone away now, and therefore I believe that's a sad time, and we have to put up with that. So I'll leave it at that, and I also would like to mention that I'm also a member of Broughton Community Council, and they object to this application as well.
Thank you, Councillor Muller. Okay, thank you. Any other members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. It's a question that I do appreciate the issues that have been raised here. I don't see here any design for this acoustic fence. And I'm quite intrigued by this. I mean, I know the issue that Councillor Mullin raised there, you were saying about that height needs to be larger. One of the things I found sometimes on my holidays, you find different things in different places. And one of the experiences I've had is when I've driven through parts of the Netherlands, you'll find that the motorways are basically on either side. There is an acoustic fence, but the top of the acoustic fence is actually curved round, which is quite clearly, when you're looking at the way that noise can travel, as the lady pointed out, noise doesn't necessarily go that way, it can go that way. And the purpose of the acoustic fence is, as far as I understand it, say in the Netherlands, is to obviously quite clearly to go and cut down the noise of the road traffic, but it also acknowledges the fact that noise doesn't just go that way, it goes different ways. So I'm wondering, are we just going to, when we're talking about acoustic fences, are we just talking about putting fences which are straight up and that is it? Or will these fences have some measure by which the noise can be reflected back down into it? The second point was, and I'm afraid I wasn't able to go on the site visit, so it'd be able to explain for me, what is the nature of the screening by the trees? What trees are and what are the trees that are being used? Are they evergreens? Are they leylandii? Are they deciduous where they, right. So when we're talking about the better screening and we're looking at trees, it's quite clear, going to look at the acoustic shadow issue, and acoustics part of it. The screening is going to be better during periods of the summer, spring, summer and autumn, and will quite clearly therefore not be as effective during the winter. Now, I would have thought that if you're going to have a process which you are looking at trying to make sure that the acoustic are properly addressed, then you should have something which was going to be equally applicable on the 21st of June as it would be on the 21st of December. So while I'm not against this in principle, I do have my concerns here, is that a simple fence isn't going to be adequate, nor do I feel that saying you have trees screening it, deciduous tree screening it, is also adequate. And I'd like some reassurance that there will be measures put in place to stop the noise from kind of going upwards, rather, because until that issue is addressed, I think I couldn't really support this.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Healy, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. My question, I'm sorry, I couldn't go to the site meeting, I wasn't well. My point is the noise from these heaters or whatever they are, pumps. I know in my ward, there's people refusing to have them because of the noise. And I find there is some when I asked my neighbor, she went into it by detail. It depends on how much you pay for them. There is some very high tech, which is the noise is a bit, I would say, less than the ones which we have at the moment. And I find they are not appropriate for a residential area where there is people. With that noise, I'm sorry, if it's me as well, I would go mad. For that reason, and the reason of which Councillor Johnson has just said, the fence, I will not vote. I do not support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Councillor Parkhurst, you were next online.
Yeah, Diolch yn fawr, Chair. I too have concerns and wish to comment about the noise implications of the proposal. I won't repeat the concerns raised previously, but just to add really that refrigeration and mechanical plant can become noisier as it ages. So therefore the impact on residents is not fixed. And if it is not properly maintained, it can increase year on year. Now, I notice in the report that there are background decibel readings, which at night time, for example, is 34 decibels, and that the decibels from this proposed plant at night time is also 34 decibels. So it wouldn't take much of a deterioration in the plant for the decibel levels from the plant to exceed the existing background levels. And I think that if this proposal does get passed, there ought to be a condition that there is annual noise monitoring, covering both day and night periods, and that there is submission of a report to the council, and that if the noise levels exceed the background noise levels, then appropriate remedial action is taken. So I'm not quite sure, Chair, how you wish to deal with that suggestion, but I do think once we come to any voting, but if this does go ahead, there ought to be this annual monitoring in order that residents don't suffer when, and it is inevitable, that the plant deteriorates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parkhurst. Councillor Carol Ellis, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I was also going to raise the issue which is on page 12, paragraph 7.10, regarding to the decibels, on the fact that the noise level does not decrease at all during the night time. So I would assume, therefore, it would be more noisy to residents. I also note on 7.12, the Community and Business Protection Team say there will be no adverse impact on the nearest receptors. Well, there's obviously an impact on the nearest residents, isn't there, from what we've just heard and from what we've heard, what we've read about in the paperwork that we've got. I'm concerned, and I note that they say, the officers say there is no, the noise reduction and the planting from the previous application is not relevant here. But I would ask, surely enforcement, if they've been notified that there is a noise issue, should have actually been out and actually surveyed this application, this store. I've got concerns over the noise levels when we look at the distances. And again, Councillor Johnson makes a valid point that there isn't a real noise reduction that we can see. I'm very concerned that there's not enough evidence to convince me that these residents will not be subject to more noise and that they are not actually being protected from the current noise. So therefore, I'm afraid I will not be voting for this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ellis. Thank you. Councillor Bithell, you were next. Sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I did have the opportunity to go on the site visit on Monday morning, and it was quite revelatory, really. Objections, it states in the report, no objections have been raised, the report states, but in fact, we have had objections, as Councillor Mullins said. There's one been received from the Community Council, Broughton and Broughton Community Council, so that is one objection. And of course, we've heard the concerns expressed by one of the residents, a close resident to the proposed site. Now, when we were there on site on Monday, there wasn't a great deal of noise to be heard, really. Okay, and as has been said, we're talking about new equipment here. The present equipment is 8 years old, and with new equipment, rather like a new car, you're going to get less noise from a new motor, a new engine, than you will get from an older one. So that will be an improvement. And as I gather it from the report, this is what Aldi is intended to do: introduce better equipment, more efficient equipment, and hopefully less noisy. Now, I'm a bit concerned, with hearing the concerns about the noise from it. There's no reference in the report here to complaints being made to our Environmental Health Department, which in my experience is the place where complaints are received in relation to such issues. And again, I think, probably as members, we've all been party to that, or at least been on the receiving end of that, where there have been constant complaints about noise from this. Now, the report does not refer to any complaints of that nature from residents. Now, that may not be the case, or I don't know, but there's no reference to it here in the report. And in fact, the department that deals with this, really, again, the community property enforcement and so on, the community enforcement, again, find no problems with the proposals, really. They meet our particular requirements as an authority. Now, of course, we can turn this down today, but if we do, I guess there'll be an appeal. The store is there, and it'll stay there, so there will be an appeal. And again, in relation to any appeal, the inspector will be asking for matters relating to complaints and matters relating to the noise that is emitted from the particular site. And again, those seem to be lacking at the moment. They seem to be within the range laid down by our policies of the council in terms of decibels. So, I think we need to bear that in mind. There is a high fence there at the moment. I thought it was the new fence, but actually it's the existing one. And there are no breaches in that fence. It's not broken in any way. Again, there's a question there, of course, of the effectiveness of that, but it's a very high one. And again, there is a Gambian wall at the back there. And again, there's the bund there at the back as well, which were all intended to mitigate the noise emanating from this particular plant in the past. Now, again, reference has been made, and reference was made in the site visit on Monday, that the bund hasn't been properly maintained, it hasn't been landscaped and so on, as was promised. We couldn't comment on that, and it's not part of this particular planning application. But that's something which probably needs to be pursued through the planning enforcement process to see what was laid down in that original planning application, and whether, in fact, that can be enforced if those particular conditions are there. But I think we are where we are in relation to this, and the intent is to introduce new plant which will be more efficient and more and less noisy and better in those terms for residents. And I think we have to treat it on that basis. I hear the comments of Councillor Johnson regarding the fence he's seen in the Netherlands and so on, and that might be well something which we would like to pursue, perhaps as a condition, to try to inhibit and reduce the amount of noise which does emit from this particular property, this particular types of operations. I must declare that I've got in my ward, it's not an Aldi's store, but I've got a little store which is very similar. And when the proposal went through, the plant we're talking about here, the kind of plant, was being situated on the western side of the building, and it was opposite to the old cottages in my ward, and I was concerned about that. Now, in that particular instance, Aldi's built a stone wall, a substantial stone wall, which is about probably 6 or 7 feet high, and I've had no complaints whatsoever at all. And those concerns existed at the time from those residents that it would have this kind of impact. So again, I don't know whether we could perhaps insist on greater noise abatement by insisting on an improved acoustic fence or more acoustic conditions, such as a wall, a high wall, which would perhaps give some sort of greater protection to the neighbours of the property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bithell. Councillor Bibby, online.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think just a few points. I think firstly, in terms of the principle, the principle is that the plant machinery is to be updated and renewed, which, as Councillor Bithell said, could possibly be an improvement given the fact that it's likely that the noise levels are being generated by the fact that plant machinery is aging. So in principle, yes, I think the application is okay, but I think it's quite clearly that members of the committee and members of the public that live close to the site, I don't think we're at a position where we are totally satisfied that the mitigation, the conditions are going to deal with some of the noise issues. So I think not to make a formal proposition at this stage, Mr. Chairman, but maybe I think the best option here is that we defer the application and we ask the applicant, as members of the committee, that
Councillor Bibby, can you wait till the end of the speakers and then I'll ask for a proposition anyway? Okay.
I did say I wasn't making one. I was making a suggestion, not formally making one.
Okay, you hinted.
But, and that gives the opportunity for the applicant to come back and provide us with some more satisfactory mitigation measures, because quite clearly these properties, unfortunately, I was unable to attend the site visit on Monday, but I know from going past the area earlier today and looking at it, we've got properties that are very, very close to the site. But yeah, personally, I think maybe that may be a suggestion to put out there to committee.
Thanks, Councillor Bibby, thank you. Councillor Johnson, do you want to come back in? Are you okay? Yeah. Councillor Ellis, you've got your hand up still. Did you want to come back in?
I did, Chair, please.
Okay, carry on.
I was unable to attend the site visit, but I did actually go there this morning to have a look, so I was familiar with exactly what it is we're talking about. Based on the previous councillor who made a suggestion, could I make a further suggestion that maybe Aldi could actually seek the advice of the Health and Safety Executive regarding the best way to reduce noise? I'm sure that they would have a lot of helpful information, seeing as how close the properties are to the equipment. And from what we've heard from residents, both in writing and the lady who spoke, that currently the noise levels are quite intrusive. It's just a suggestion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Got any other speakers before I bring the officer back in? Okay, I'd just like to say that some of the points that Councillor Bibby made about deferring could possibly be included in extra conditions on the fencing. We did have. Did you bring the picture up of the fencing a minute ago? Do you want to just put the picture? We've got some pictures of the fencing. I was on the site visit, obviously. I think I saw 3 fences, and then it stopped. So there was quite a gap. The bund looked as though it looked a bit lower than it should have been. The trees were in full bloom, if you like, but evidently they're not deciduous. So during the winter months, there's not going to be any leaves on them. So obviously the noise would be greater in the winter months. At one point there, it is quite close. I think it's important. I mean, it looked a bit of a mess to me, to be honest. The first thing I said, and I think some sort of maintenance agreement should be in place for a condition to make sure, and the noise level monitored. Really, okay. Well, I think we all agree that this new equipment will be better than the equipment that's there because it's got. I think it's been there about 8 years. I think. So there's an improvement there, but we still want to make sure that noise isn't. It obviously does interfere with the residents. I mean, I'm just thinking of years ago. I had a noise from a refrigerator. I think it was an Airbus, and I'm nearly a mile away from Airbus, and it was at night. And it was still night, and it drove me around the bend because it kept starting and stopping, and it wasn't even loud, but it was just you're waiting for it to start up again. So I can appreciate how upsetting, annoying these noises are. But I personally think if we could put in some conditions to make sure it's monitored, a maintenance agreement on the trees, perhaps some more trees put in. The fence, it was quite high, but if it could be another type of fence, as Councillor Johnson says, to keep that noise level in, with a curve on the top. And I think the fences need to be extended. So, having said that, okay, might be quieter, this new equipment, but we still need to make sure that the residents are protected. I think it's very important. Councillor Bithell, yeah.
If I recall, there was no fence on the sort of the southern side. That equipment, you just had the hedge and the bank on which the hedge was situated. So again, I think we should perhaps insist on an acoustic fence there or wall or whatever is necessary, because again, they equally need that kind of protection.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think we're all concerned with the length of the fence. I think from what we saw, and I'd like to have seen another plan somehow of the fence going further down the back and maybe a bit higher, because I don't know. It's up to the committee, but if we can put that in conditions, I'm happy with that. But if you want to defer it till we get some more advice from, was it environmental health, I think, wasn't it, to recommend some better fencing or some more trees or making the bund better. So I'll move that back to the committee, and I'll ask for a proposition, please.
Can we respond?
Yeah. I'll just go back to the officer.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to reiterate that this proposal seeks for a reduction in noise levels. So if this proposal is refused, then neighbours will not see any improvement in noise. Firstly, a point was made regarding bunding and the maintenance of the existing site. The bunding's outside of the red edge and is not part of this application, so we are only taking into account the plant machinery as part of this application. There was comments regarding the design of the fence. So the fencing can be shown on the elevations, which will be 2.4 metres on the southern and western boundary. It must be noted that a noise assessment has been submitted and looked at by our pollution team, who have no concerns regarding noise and have considered that the mitigating factors are acceptable. However, we could request a further condition to get more precise details on the fencing. The suggested noise condition is not imposable, as it would fail the tests for the imposition of planning conditions on the basis that it is not necessary, as it replicates the controls that exist under other statutory legislation. We haven't been notified of any noise complaints that have been logged with the pollution team. However, as you can see, no objections have been raised to this application. Councillor Bithell, sorry, I'm not sure what you meant when you said that the report shows that no objections have been raised. The report shows that the councils have objected on noise-related issues. If there are any complaints regarding the existing site or any existing maintenance of the site that Aldi have not conformed with, then the enforcement team would look into this as part of the enforcement policy. In regards to Councillor Ellis's point about health and safety are not the statutory body in respect of noise. The Community and Business Protection team would comment on that, as they have during this application, and they've said that they've got no objections. There is an acoustic fence on the southern boundary, Councillor Bithell, that is closest to Vickers Way, which is 10 metres away from the site. None of those residents have raised any objections to the proposal or raised any concerns regarding noise. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Steph. Yeah, just bring Matthew in, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just to pick up on some of the points that Steph has made. So, listening to what members have said during the debate, that there is a risk, it appears to me, that if this goes to appeal, there's no technical evidence to support what you're saying. In fact, it's quite the contrary. So there's a noise assessment that has been submitted with this planning application. And that noise assessment indicates that the levels of noise that would be generated from the machines on site are okay. That noise assessment has also been assessed by our environmental health officers in the pollution control team, and they've raised no objection to that. So it would be very difficult for us at appeal to support the comments that members have raised about noise, because actually the evidence that's submitted with this application is that noise levels would not be such that they would result in any additional harm. I mean, I know there were some members who were not able to make the site visit on Monday, but I was at the site visit, and we did stand in the lady who's made representations. So I couldn't hear those. The existing machines, never mind the ones that are proposed to be replacing them, which are quieter. Just to pick up on what Steph was saying around the condition. So as Glyn has shown on the plans, the proposals for acoustic fencing are shown there, and listening to what members are saying, I can pick up that you've got some concerns around the detail of those fences. So it is in the gift of the committee to add a condition that says, notwithstanding the plans, or what would be the approved plans, that details of acoustic fencing, and boundary treatment should be submitted to us for further details, so that we can ensure ourselves that the details of the fences are more appropriate. And then finally, I think, as Steph has also alluded to, there was some mention about things that are outside of the red edge. I think that if there are concerns around the maintenance of the bund in particular, and the trees and the vegetation that are outside of the red edge, but within the red edge of the original application that gave permission for this store, then we could look at those through the planning enforcement process. But I just really wanted to caution members that given the noise assessment that's been submitted with the application and the lack of objection from environmental health, it would be very difficult for us to defend that reason for refusal at appeal. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Matthew. Just wanted to point out that I know I agree with Matthew. When we were there, we couldn't really hear any noise. It was fairly quiet. We could hear the noise when we were standing next to it. But I do believe this machinery at night and early in the morning, it has a startup time. And I believe it is noisy during the startup time. Just wanted to point that out. And then ticking over during the day probably. So it sort of kicks in and it is noisier.
I just want to clarify one point. The site meeting is usually in the day, okay? And as you said, you could only hear the ticking over of it. So it's on a timer, so it takes more energy in. I'm not an engineer, but it takes more energy in, and that's when it makes higher sounds. Now, can I explain something? At night, when you are in a house at night or anywhere at night, every sound is more echoed. So when you say you were there in the day, we don't know when these sounds were monitored. Were it monitored in the daytime or nighttime? Thank you, Chair.
Matthew.
Okay, just very quickly then. So when the assessment is made, the noise assessment is submitted. It looks at the level of sound throughout the day and including at night. So I accept it will get noisier, but at night the level of the machinery comes down, so it runs at a lower level, so the noise will be quieter. But notwithstanding what you're saying, this has been assessed by environmental health, and the noise assessment that's submitted with the application indicates that at 24 hours throughout the day, the levels of noise that would be generated would not result in significant harm.
I'm sorry, I can't let you finish. Okay, Councillor Parkhurst.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Did I understand correctly from Steph Connor that having a condition about an annual noise compliance report is not permissible? And if that is the case, I'd like to understand why that isn't the case, because the report says that the background noise at night is 34 decibels and that this plant has a noise level when it is brand new of 34 decibels. Therefore, that noise level will increase beyond the background level as time goes on. So I don't understand why it's not permissible to require Aldi to monitor the noise level annually, submit a report, and if the noise does increase, to take appropriate remedial action. And I'd like an explanation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parkhurst. Councillor Duffy, you wanted to come back in, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes, just to point out on page 7, and that paragraph there, 4 lines from the bottom of that paragraph, it states no objections have been raised as part of the statutory consultation. It was that I was referring to. There have been other objections, obviously, but not statutory ones. That's what I was referring to. Again, as has been pointed out, by Matthew, we were told on site on Monday that in fact the machinery is not sort of put into full usage during the night time. For that reason, during the daytime, there's an ambient background noise which masks some of this particular noise, and again, they use that obviously to their advantage, and so the fact they don't use the equipment as much at night as they do in the daytime to reduce the noise impact. Again, there is no evidence here at all, and I'm sure there would have been had there been a lot of comments and a lot of criticisms and complaints about the background noise here. You know, because that's certainly my experience as a local member in my area. I'm sure the local members will be the same. If there's a noise problem, you'll know about it. You probably hear it yourself. And again, there's no evidence of that here. Without that, you know, I think we're very in a difficult circumstances to prove that particular point. I think this will improve things to the extent that it'll be new machinery, and that will have a beneficial effect in that respect. The equipment there at the moment is 8 years old and probably come to the end of its useful life, and certainly that will improve matters. And again, I think we ought to be moving now to a proposition, and I think I would like to formally move that we do. No.
Last speaker, Councillor Brown. I think you, because we've had a good debate on this already. I just want to bring Councillor Brown in, and then I'll ask for a proposition.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. At what distance from the machinery was the noise impact assessment taken? And can you clarify, please, that there have been no noise nuisance reports submitted? Is that correct?
I think they did say that, but like, Steph, do you want to answer that? Has there been any complaints, and have they been monitored because of the complaints?
We've not been made aware of any complaints, no. Just checking the distance now.
Whilst we're just checking the someone's mic is on. Whilst we're just checking the distance, just to respond to Councillor Parkhurst's question around a monitoring condition. I mean, as we've discussed at planning committee before, you know, there are 6 tests of a condition, a planning condition, and one of them is around whether it's necessary, and there's another one about proportionality. And as I think Steph did allude to this when she responded at the beginning around replicating other statutory provisions that are operated by other parts of the council. So if there is a noise issue that residents are concerned about, then that should be properly addressed through our colleagues in environmental health, through a statutory noise complaint. And I can confirm that we've had no planning complaints around noise through the enforcement section.
Okay, did you find that info? Obviously, that would be noise pollution would be reported to, wouldn't it? And they would take that up on board. Why are you looking for that? I mean, I've got concerns that if this is refused, it's going to remain in the situation it is now. There's not going to be any better fencing. No, I mean, the equipment will be older and noisier, as we've been told. So I think it would be foolish in a way to refuse it, because well, hopefully this should better as long as it's monitored and we can add conditions. But I think to refuse it would remain as it is now and could be causing the noise that's been played, which is not acceptable to the residents. So I live in hope that it would definitely improve. Did you find it? No.
Thank you, Chair. Can members hear me? Yeah, so through you, Chair, just quickly looking at the noise assessment that's provided, it doesn't provide an actual distance, but what it does confirm is that the methodology used for rating and assessing the noise impact is in accordance with the British standard for undertaking such assessments. So the points of measurement in relation to such assessment will be contained within that British standard. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think we've had a good debate on this really now, and I'd like to request from members a proposition, please. Councillor Mullen.
Thanks, Chair. Due to my concerns and also the concerns of some of the committee members, I feel that we are desperately in need of a condition in regards to the planting, the pruning and the repair of the mechanical machines, and also concerns about the height of the fence regarding noise. With that in mind, I think the lack of the condition is essential, and therefore I move refusal. Thank you.
Councillor Helen Brown seconded it. Okay. Anybody like? Yeah, I'll ask for reasons first, and then. Can I just ask if, obviously, if it's refused, those conditions you mentioned wouldn't come into place anyway? Would they? We're all right in saying that? Can I bring David in?
If I can just hopefully assist on that. So the advice is if a condition can overcome a point of concern or a reason for refusal, then a condition should be imposed, provided it passes the test that Matthew's alluded to. So if your concerned councillor can be overcome by a condition, then the recommendation should be one of approval with the condition rather than a refusal, because if the condition overcomes the concern, then on an appeal situation, the first question the inspector will ask, could a condition overcome your concern? And if it could, then the decision should be, or the recommendation should be, one of approval subject to the condition that would overcome your concern. I hope that helps with the proposition.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. In seconding it, I would like to also add in refusal because we don't know the distance that the assessment was undertaken from the machinery.
Reason for refusal. Councillor Bithell, did you want to come in?
Can I propose an amendment, Chair? That I move that the recommendation be approved with the added condition that the best British standard effective acoustic fencing be installed on both sides of the business, where in fact the new equipment will be put in place.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move a further amendment that we defer this application until further clarity has been provided with the acoustic fencing, and that the conditions that members have requested have the opportunity to be formalised.
Yeah. Okay, now we've got three propositions on the table, and well, my opinion, I don't know, I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, that if Councillor Bithell is proposing approval really with the condition, that is negating the first proposition, and so is the deferral really. So my opinion is, I hope I'm not wrong, I think we should vote on refusal, and then if that fails, then we'll have to have another proposition. If it doesn't fail, it'll be accepted as a refusal. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. I'm told I'm right on that one, so we'll take. Okay. On the refusal, if it is refused, we need the reasons for refusal, and the proposer and the seconder, if in the event of any appeal, should be willing to go and defend the reasons for refusal. So, can we have the reasons for refusal again, please, from Councillor Mullin?
It's the lack of conditions and the commitment of repair, maintenance, and the pruning and planting of plants in the bunded area. All them areas are concerns, and as far as I am concerned, until them areas are looked at and seriously considered and a formal condition is put in place, I have no alternative but to refuse this planning application.
Yes, Matthew.
Okay, so I've heard what Councillor Mullins has said, but 2 points really. So you're saying that you're looking to refuse it because of the lack of conditions. What we're saying, and David's already alluded to it as well, is that we can add conditions to a consent that pick up on the concerns that the members have raised in the committee. So principally, the issue of the acoustic fence seems to be a bigger issue, and we have suggested a condition that says, notwithstanding the approved plans, details of boundary treatment, including an acoustic fence, should be submitted for our approval. So that can be dealt with by condition. In terms of the bund and the vegetation, that sits outside of this application site. So we couldn't refuse it on that basis. But what I said earlier was that if there are issues around the maintenance of the vegetation on the bund, then we will look at that separately through planning enforcement against the original planning application that was submitted. The reasons for refusal, I think, that you're suggesting at this point, we would really struggle to defend those at appeal, that they're not sound or robust.
I just am concerned that a refusal will, at the moment, the conditions at the moment will stay as they are. So there's going to be no improvement for the residents whatsoever, because they won't put any better fencing. Having said that, we'll take a vote on refusal of the application. I'm not going to move to the vote now, Colin. We'll take the vote on refusal first, then.
In second,
Yeah. That I was told at a full council meeting when I seconded something that I went to remove my seconding, and I was told that I couldn't do that by Mr. Councillor Riverton, who's very knowledgeable on the Constitution, I'm told. So yeah, evidently you can't remove the seconding of the proposition. So we will take the vote now on refusal. Okay, all in favour of refusal? One on there. Okay, is that 3? That's 4 for refusal. Okay, all against refusal? Eight. That's 8. So that proposition has been lost. Can I have another proposition, please? Councillor Biffle.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation before us with the added condition that the best effective British standard acoustic fencing be installed around the plant to be situated to the south and the western sides of this particular business.
Can I have a second for that proposition? Councillor Johnson, second. So the proposition is for approval. Will this cover this details of the fencing and boundary treatment to be submitted before the installation of this equipment as a condition? Are you happy with that? Is that what you mean? Yeah. And I would like to also add that the levels are monitored at least annually, I would say, of the sound of this equipment. Did you say we can't do that? But I don't see why we can't.
Yeah. I think that point has been actually covered, hasn't it, really? If there's a complaint at any time, not within 12 months later, if there's any complaints about the noise levels from this plant, it should be and ought to be reported to our own environmental health department, who will deal with it. And again, that's common practice, isn't it? And again,
okay,
we haven't
it should be so.
I'm going to wait for a 12-month monitoring report to determine that. And again, that's only fair to the residents who will have to put up with that 12 months before anything's done about it. So again, it's that, as has been stated, we have procedures and we have particular departments here dealing with those particular aspects quite separate from planning. And it's right and proper that we should use those, and we do use them. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'd just like to encourage residents, if they do feel the noises, to put a complaint into noise pollution. Yes, Councillor Johnson.
Just one extra added point to that. It is just to make sure that it's going to be 365 days a year efficient. So I know in the report it's talked about the trees as being part of the sound barrier. Whatever is in place should be the same in the winter as it is in the summer. I think that's.
Happy with
But
that
to add on to
suggestion?
that, yes.
You okay to add that condition?
Year-round effective.
Did we get them conditions? You got them? Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to just read that proposition out so we make sure Councillor Bithell has got it right?
Yeah.
Are you going on?
Above the recommendation.
Okay, so just so I'm understanding members correctly, an additional condition that would require the submission of further details in relation to acoustic fencing, acoustic boundary treatment, that would include, but not be, not just include details around 365 days a year. Yeah.
Could be submitted before the installation.
Yeah.
Could be submitted before the installation. Yeah. Okay, we all got that? Okay, all in favour of that proposition, please? Raise your hand. Oh, it tells something. That's 8. All those against? 1.
There may be some abstention.
Any abstentions? Councillor Bibby, Councillor Parkhurst. 2 abstentions. Yeah. Okay, that application has been approved with conditions. Councillor Ellis?
Abstain.
You abstain, yeah? Yeah. Councillor Ellis abstain. Okay. Councillor Mullen, did you vote? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you didn't vote in favour. Okay, that application has been approved with those conditions. Okay, thanks very much. If anybody wants to leave, you're welcome to stay a bit longer if you want. But, yeah. Okay, members, next item on the agenda is agenda item 9.2. Sounds a lot, 9.2. We haven't had that many applications. Full application, variation of condition 2 for the retrospective amendments to the approved scheme at land at Gladstone Way and Ash Lane, Hawarden, Deeside. It's recommended for permission, and the officer presenting the item is James Beattie. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. This is a section 73 application to vary condition 2 of Planning Permission FUL 76925, which itself amended Planning Permission FUL 19524, which is for the erection of 300 dwellings, which included 105 affordable homes, new vehicle and pedestrian accesses, public open spaces, landscaping, and all associated ancillary works, land at Gladstone Way and Ash Lane, Hawarden and Mancott, Deeside, and that application was granted by this planning committee in June 2025. The amendments sought are primarily the minor relocation of a number of the dwelling footprints, which is required following the completion of intrusive site investigations and preparatory works undertaken as required by condition, which has confirmed the exact position of remnant mine shafts in order to ensure that all development is clear of any exclusion areas. Other amendments sought are limited to minor house type substitutions and cosmetic changes to the approved houses, such as handing the approved house, which means in effect mirroring its orientation. Section 73 applications allow for the variation or removal of conditions attached to a previously approved plan permission. This enables applicants to make changes to an existing permission without substituting entirely new application. The Section 73 application can therefore be useful for material amendments that go beyond the scope of non-material amendments, but do not fundamentally alter the development. There's no statutory limit on the degree of change permissible to conditions under Section 73, which depends on the context of the original permission and the proposed changes. But the change must only relate to conditions and not to the operative part of the permission. It's important to state that permission granted under Section 73 takes effect as a new independent permission which sits alongside the original permission, which remains intact and unamended. It's open to the applicant to decide whether to implement the new permission or the one originally granted, though it's not possible to mix and match between the two. The use of Section 73 is a common practice for many developments of all scales, which can often require minor amendments due to issues or circumstances that arise once development starts. Section 73 applications are a method of fine-tuning development consents rather than substantial redesigns, and it's considered that in this instance, in the context of the development we're discussing, this application meets all the criteria for a Section 73 application. As previously stated, the amendments sought are the minor relocation of a number of the dwelling footprints required following the completion of site investigations and works undertaken required by condition on the original consent, which have confirmed the exact permission of mine shafts, and in order to ensure that all development is clear of the exclusion areas. The mine shafts are site features that were known about at the time of the original application and were discussed in the original reports, and as they have been identified by the Mining Remediation Authority and by the applicant's own ground investigations and site surveys. Now that intrusive investigations have been undertaken, these minor amendments to plot positions are required in order to ensure that the safety and stability of the site is ensured. There's no change to the number of dwellings proposed, and importantly, the number of affordable houses delivered by the Section 106 is unaffected. It's important to reiterate that the scope of this application is strictly limited to the proposed amendments to the plot locations and other minor amendments as detailed in the submission, and it's not an opportunity to revisit other matters previously discussed at the time of the original permission. All conditions previously imposed and the requirement of the Section 106 legal agreement will be maintained on this permission and will still bind to the development. And in summary, it's considered that the proposal represents acceptable minor material amendments to the approved scheme, the majority of which are required in order to ensure compliance with the mining legacy investigation. The character and scope of the development previously approved is unchanged. The proposal is acceptable and fall within the scope of the Section 73 application. It's therefore recommended that the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, James. We have some late observations on this one, so Matthew will just go through those for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We received a observation from Hawarden Community Council on the 12th of May that reiterates their previous objections. And in addition to the report, so paragraph 2.01 of the report, the avoidance of doubt, the development as amended by the Section 73 consent is bound to the provisions and obligations of the Section 106 legal agreement that accompanies planning permission FUL 000019524, dated 29th of August 2025. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. Moving on to the third party representation, I've got no speaker against unless one suddenly appeared. And I have a speaker for that. Stuart Andrew is the applicant. And you have 3 minutes, Stuart. But can I and I'm not sort of predicting what you're going to say, but it's come to my attention that there's a lot of changes here, 52 changes I've noticed under this section 2. And it come to my attention that residents and local members have found it difficult to understand. Could you try and possibly explain as best possible?
Could I elaborate to that separate to the 3 minutes, Chair, just very quickly? Would that be possible?
So you're able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
The actual as I'll cover in the statement shortly, there's 4 principal changes that we've applied for.
Okay, I'll just stop you a second. So if I give you a little bit longer, you can go through the changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy to do that.
Okay,
thank you.
So yeah, as I cover in the statement, there's 4 principal changes being applied for, which James mentioned, which relate to minor matters in relation to the site. In the covering letter that we've provided to summarise the application, we've identified those changes on a plot-by-plot basis, which gives the impression that there's 52 changes, when in reality there's 4, with each change affecting a number of plots. The image that James that was displayed on the screen a few moments ago that showed the site, I believe shows the original permission in black and the proposed layout in red over the top. So you'll see in looking at that there is very, very minor changes being proposed. I think there's one image which shows the overall site and probably gives the best impression of just how small scale these changes are. Just to go back to the prepared statement, I'm Stuart Andrew from Castle Green, and we obviously are the applicant of this submission. This site is already under construction based on the permission already granted. The application before you today is, as I've said, for some very minor changes to that permission. That was the image I was referring to, which, as you can see, is pretty much completely overlaps the original approved site layout. This sort of application would typically be dealt with by officers under delegated powers, but we've been told that it has been asked to be brought before you today due to confusion over the changes proposed, as we've just discussed. A list of those changes was provided with the covering letter we have submitted with the application, but to clarify, there are 4 elements to the amendments being sought. We're seeking to slightly relocate a handful of the 300 dwellings, as you can see from the plan, to improve the design of boundaries between plots to accommodate lower level retaining walls. This is intended to allow rear gardens of some plots to be flatter, which would be a benefit to future residents. There were levels on external works included with the original application, so it's to amend that. We're seeking to change the design of a limited number of some other approved homes to be as per others approved elsewhere within the scheme. This is also so all house types proposed will have internal features that will better allow future conversion to air source heating in the future. And typically this is a change to house types to ones that would just have provision for larger cylinder cupboards, which is obviously a very minor change. We're also applying to give sales names to some homes that were previously only referred to in the original application by a reference number. And finally, we're seeking to relocate, as James has mentioned, and probably the main reason for the changes, we're seeking to relocate a limited number of homes within the area of the site that has been developed for affordable dwellings in partnership with Allen. There is a small mine shaft in that area which has been known about since before the allocation of the site, which has turned out when exposed to be around 4 metres further west than was indicated on Coal Authority records that were provided to us when we bought the land. There is a separate image that highlights that area, but without me standing up and pointing to the screen, it's very difficult to see. But I'm sure that could be highlighted. There you go. We were obviously provided by records of the Coal Authority in terms of the mapping out of the site, mine shaft locations and so on. The mine shafts were covered, the field was in agricultural use. When we've exposed the mine shafts, one of them was about 4 metres in a different location than the mapping. So we've needed to make minor amendments to the plan to accommodate that. As I've said, these are really minor changes required to revise small details relating to the scheme. They merely enable us to better develop the site without there being any impact or detriment whatsoever to neighbours of the scheme. And given that none of the minor changes proposed cause any effects at all outside of the boundaries of the site. Given all of this, and as I've already said, this is exactly the sort of application that would typically have just been dealt with by your officers, rather than being referred to yourselves. The minor changes are no real consequence other than future residents having a better garden or engineering works being more easily accommodated. The minor nature of the application is as reflected by the concise nature of the committee report and by the images on the screen. The report recommends approval of this application to enable those changes, and we therefore hope that you would consider it appropriate for you to approve this planning application. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. It was a bit clearer. Okay, we have now a speaker from the Hawarden Community Council attending virtually. That's Councillor Connor Wynne. Connor, you have 3 minutes, Connor.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to make known Hawarden Community Council's objection to this application in the strongest possible terms. These amendments, if granted, will lead to a scheme materially different to that for which permission was granted. They will lead to a scheme with an even greater occupancy. This is not an acceptable position to Hawarden Community Council or the residents that we serve. The officer's report makes reference to, and I quote, the minor relocation of a number of the dwelling footprints required following the completion of intrusive site investigations. In reality, the layout of the site has materially changed, and alarmingly, a number of properties have been redesigned to feature more bedrooms. There are 52 individual amendments to note, involving the changing of property types, designs, sizes, layouts, and site positioning. This cannot be described as minor in nature. The developer alleges that they were unaware of the position of mine shafts across the site until just a few weeks ago. The issue of the area being previously mined has long been referenced within literally hundreds of objections to this site previously. Residents and councillors alike have advised that historical mining in the area would frustrate delivery and therefore the viability of this scheme. They were right. The developer previously relied upon an intrusive coal mining risk assessment from 7 years ago to gain the primary permission. Why were the mine shafts not correctly identified within this report? Clearly, the report was and is insufficient and inaccurate. We can therefore have no confidence in its findings. I note that intrusive surveys have recently been carried out, but the up-to-date coal mining risk assessment or report has not been submitted to confirm these findings. Surely, given the previous inaccuracies now evident, members cannot make a decision on whether to allow the progression of the construction of this scheme in the absence of such a vital new report. Members may recall that just a number of years ago, and a very short distance from this site, a resident of Mancott fell 24 feet down a mine shaft that she was previously unaware of right underneath her driveway. She described after the incident how she felt lucky to be alive. By not demanding certainties now, members could quite easily be putting the safety of contractors and future residents of this site in jeopardy. This cannot be an acceptable position. I note that there are still a number of conditions needed to be discharged before works should actually be commencing on this site, but the developer has almost completed the shell of 4 properties, which also all feature sold signs on their exteriors. How can this be? This is not the time to be discharging any further conditions. This is the time for important details to be confirmed and for planning enforcement action. I refuse to have the residents of my community taken for granted and attempted to be taken for fools. I implore members at the very least to defer the application pending further information and confirmation on a number of key points, not least the whereabouts of mine shafts, or reject the application as it stands before them today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gwynn. Okay, we have a local member now wishing to speak. That's Councillor Sam Swash. Sam, you have 5 minutes. That's 1 minute gone. When he's joking.
Thank you, Chair. Before I begin, if I could just say the representative for the developer mentioned the concise nature of the officer report. The residents of my ward haven't been able to see that because obviously it came on after they've been consulted. They were given something quite different. But if I can begin by drawing members' attention to this document, this is the Welsh Waters Developer Services Report into the hydraulic modelling assessment for the Ash Lane development. And despite how technical that title might sound, this is not some minor note buried away in an appendix somewhere. This is Welsh Water setting out whether the drainage and sewerage network can actually cope with this development. And what do Welsh Water say? They say the development would cause, and I quote, significant predicted detriment to the network. They say the hydraulic model relied upon by the developer has low confidence. They say large parts of that model have not been properly updated for more than 20 years. And they admit that the impact on the Queensferry treatment works itself has not even been assessed.
Councillor Swash, you seem to be discussing things that aren't really on this application. This application is for a variation of condition 2. You were talking about Welsh Water. I can't see why that is associated with this application.
Chair, with respect, this application seeks to vary condition 2, which governs the approved drainage layouts and infrastructure details for the site. The hydraulic modelling assessment directly concerns whether the sewage infrastructure can accommodate the amended development proposals and is therefore plainly material to members' consideration of the revised drainage arrangements. Indeed, the HMA is referenced in the officer's report on page 24 of the agenda, and as James Beattie said earlier, we're not here to discuss things previously debated. The HMA has not previously been debated, as I was going to come on to.
Oh, carry on.
And as I was saying, now members of this committee may well be listening to this and thinking, well, I've never seen this report. And you'd be right, because despite this report being produced by Welsh Water in February 2025, when this committee was asked 4 months later to approve the Ash Lane application, members of this committee weren't provided with this report. And I think residents are entitled to ask some very serious questions about that. Why was this report not put before Planning Committee before they voted to approve the application? And
Councillor
why
Clark,
did this report...
You are definitely referring to the previous planning consents for the development. So I'm sorry, but I can't allow you to keep mentioning that. If you can just keep your speech to this actually application, because you're referring to the committee decision in June last year. That's been made. Well, this is an application for a variation of a condition.
I'm sure the residents of my ward won't be pleased with the way I keep being interrupted, and I've already made clear about how this is relative to condition 2, this is an application to vary condition 2, as I've explained. This HMA is referenced in the officer report. It's on page 24 of the agenda, and it hasn't previously been debated because you didn't have it when this application was approved.
I would give you a bit longer since I've interrupted you, but yeah, just try and keep it to this application. Yeah, you know, in my opinion, you are keep referring to the previous application.
As I was saying, why was this report not put before the planning committee before that? Why did this report only appear on the planning portal months after permission had already been granted? Now, I don't know the answer to those questions because despite freedom of information requests being submitted, asking when this council first received that report, the council has refused to comply and has now been reported to the Information Commissioner's Office. Now, how do members of this committee think that looks to the public? A critical document outlining serious concerns with the drainage and sewerage infrastructure produced in February 2025, but not given to members of this committee when they were making a decision months later. I'd say it looks pretty bad, because from the outside looking in, it appears that this committee approved the most unpopular development in Flintshire recent history without being shown a report raising serious concerns about sewer flooding, drainage and network capacity. And this matters for another reason too, because concerns arising from that same hydraulic modelling assessment process were later relied on by this same committee as part of the basis for rejecting Castle Green Homes' proposed development in Ulo. So residents are entitled to ask why one development appears to have been subjected to a very different level of scrutiny to another. And whilst all of this was happening, development on the site has already commenced and houses...
Again, you're referring to an application in Ulo. You know, that's got nothing to do with the variation in condition 2 on this application. I know you do. I know you're doing best on behalf of your residents, and I appreciate that. I do the same. But if you could just keep it to this particular item on the agenda and not keep bringing up previous applications.
I think it's deeply unfortunate that I'm not being allowed to represent my residents without being continuously interrupted by the chair of this committee.
Councillor Squash, I did say the reason I have interrupted you, and the reason I'm interrupting you, you know, I'll go to legal, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, because you are referring to other applications. And I did say that you're doing your best for your residents, and I would do the same. So I don't blame you for that. I would do the same. It's all right. Don't worry about the time. I'll give you longer. But please try and keep it to this application and not previous ones.
I'll continue because I hope this is now relevant to you. Whilst all of this has been happening, development on the site has already commenced and houses have been sold. This is despite conditions stating, as Councillor Wynne referred, that development should not begin before certain drainage matters were approved. Again, residents are entitled to ask, what is the point of planning conditions in Flintshire if private developers can just crack on regardless? Now, I called this application into committee today because the consultation process surrounding these amendments has been nothing short of farcical. Residents have been expected to comment on hundreds of pages of technical documents with no clear explanation of the cumulative impact of the proposed changes, no meaningful before and after comparison, no accessible summary explaining what these amendments actually mean in practice for the communities expected to live with them. And I implore members not to underestimate just how angry residents are about that. Just look at the number of representations that have been made, albeit small. One says, the bewildering layer of supporting documentation and extensive use of technical language serve only to thwart the attempts of residents to engage with the process. It would not be unreasonable to take the view that this amounts to deliberate obfuscation. Another resident said, this process is not user-friendly and will put people off commenting. And another wrote, it is not possible for a lay person to clearly understand the full extent of the proposed changes. And they are absolutely right. Because consultation only means something if people can actually understand what is being consulted upon. That is clearly not the case here. Residents should not need a degree in planning law and several free weekends to understand what a developer is trying to do to their community. After the scenes that accompanied the approval of this development in June, public confidence in this committee has already seriously been damaged. If these amendments are approved today, despite residents being effectively locked out of meaningful participation, then this committee will finish the job of putting itself beyond the pale in the eyes of the public. You'll be sending a very clear message that consultation in Flintshire is not about listening to residents at all. It is simply a box-ticking exercise to complete before giving private developers exactly what they want. In conclusion, I would ask each of you to remember just who it is that you're elected to serve when voting on this application today, because in my view, it isn't private developers.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Swash. Although a lot of it was not to do with this application, I still stick by what I said. Okay. Other members, yeah. Have we got anybody wants to speak on this application? Well, yeah, I've got a note here that Councillor Gillian Brockley wanted to speak, but she didn't seem to be online. She is.
Hello, Chair. Yes, I am online. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're there now. See you. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Brockley. Yeah, you have 5 minutes as the adjoining ward member. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to begin by asking committee members a very simple question. As previously commented on by previous speakers, how can houses already be under construction and some even sold on this site when condition 22 relating to sewerage and drainage has only partially been discharged? Because condition 22 is very clear. It states that no development shall commence until a point of connection on the public sewerage system has been identified through the HMA, the hydraulic modelling assessment, and approved by the local authority. And yet Welsh Water's own response on these amendments state that the condition should only be fully discharged following the implementation and completion of the approved details. How are those words compatible with the development already taking place on site? Because to most people, planning conditions mean one thing, that certain things must happen before development begins. Not during, not afterwards, but before. And if conditions of this importance can effectively become optional once permission is granted, then what confidence can residents possibly have in the planning system? We are repeatedly told that planning conditions protect communities, that conditions can be dealt with later, and that safeguards are in place to protect residents. But what we are seeing here appears to be the exact opposite. Development proceeding first, while unresolved infrastructure concerns are left to catch up afterwards. The changes proposed, once again, increase occupancy on this site through alterations to house types and bedroom numbers.
Councillor Brockley?
Yes.
Can I stop you a second? Councillor Swash, you need to leave the room. With your dispensation says you have to leave the room before any debate.
Once the debate.
Oh, beg your pardon, yeah. Okay. Apologies. Be on, Councillor Brockley. Can we have a bit of quiet, please, in the room? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll have to catch up afterwards. The change you proposed, once again, increased occupancy on this site through alterations to the house types, as I've said, and bedroom numbers. In other words, more people, more pressure on roads, on schools, on drainage, and on local services. And this matters because density and overdevelopment were major concerns raised by residents and councillors at the original application, although I know that you don't want me to mention that. So residents are entitled to ask why the same concerns appear to produce wildly different outcomes to the ULO development, depending on which development is in front of the committee. Inconsistency has become a recurring theme throughout this entire process. The quality and clarity of information provided by the developer has been consistently poor. At the original hearing, concerns were raised by the residents about the lack of 3D visuals and elevations to properly show what was being proposed and how it would impact on the neighbouring community. Again, this committee didn't bother to ask for those details, and remarkably, once permission had been granted, those visuals suddenly appeared on the developer's own website. And as Councillor Swash has referenced, we've seen that in its most extraordinary form with the HMA, the Hydraulic Modelling Assessment, a document which confirms exactly what residents had been warning about, which conveniently only appeared after planning permission had been granted. I'm sure residents across Flintshire will be astonished to know that private housing developments in Flintshire are being approved without decision makers being given critical information relating to the ability of the local drainage and sewerage network to cope. I'm sure they will be even more concerned to know that their own warnings about these matters will be flippantly ignored while planning committee members shrug their shoulders, stick their fingers in their ears and say, well, Welsh Water didn't
Councillor Brockley, that's uncalled for. So I'd appreciate, again, as I said to Councillor Swash, can you keep this to condition 2? You mentioned condition 22 again, and that condition has been partially discharged. That's the water sewage. So can you not be disrespectful to committee members? We have a tough decision to make at these meetings, and it's not fair for you in a group of Flintshire people's voice who've got 2 places on this committee and they won't take them up. Carry on.
I apologise if you find anything that I say disrespectful, Chair. And that theme continues with those amendments.
Councillor Brockley,
Yes,
can you apologise for that last statement about the committee, please?
I just did apologise. I said, I apologise if you find anything that I say disrespectful, and I apologise to the committee if they find anything that I say
Okay, thank you.
disrespectful. Thank you, Chair. And that theme continues, as previously mentioned. With these amendments, residents are being asked to comment on these changes spread across hundreds of pages of technical documents with no clear explanation of what has changed, why it has changed, or what the impact will be. There is no simple, transparent guide identifying what is new, what is different, and what is specifically being altered because of mining investigations, as previously mentioned by Councillor Conor Wynne. Residents have been left with the impression that the approach here has simply been as follows: provide the bare minimum information as possible, make the process as difficult as possible to follow, and hope that scrutiny is limited so that recommendation can be approved. If this committee approves these amendments today, despite residents being denied an opportunity to understand and respond to them properly, then you'll be setting a deeply dangerous precedent, because it will send a message to developers across Flintshire that if you bury major changes beneath enough technical jargon and enough paperwork, meaningful engagement simply becomes optional. Ultimately, today is a test of this committee and who it really represents. Will members condone a process that residents, in their own words, have found inaccessible and obstructive? Will members approve amendments that many residents have struggled to properly understand? And will members allow development to continue despite unresolved conditions related to critical drainage infrastructure? Can our planning committee finally be trusted to make the correct decision regarding Ash Lane, given they have been given now all the information, and at the very least defer this application or outright refuse it? I truly hope that it can. Thank you, Chair. And also, Chair, I don't think that Flintshire people's voice accepting of the seat.
Councillor Brockley, your 5 minutes are up. Thank you very much.
Of course it is. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andrew Parkhurst, you were next speaker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would, of course, appreciate officers' response to those serious questions raised by the speakers. I have a particular question regarding the distance from the mine shafts that the properties will be. Perhaps someone could answer that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parkhurst. Yeah, the officer will come back on that one. Councillor Helen Brown, you were next.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions to start with. Why have works commenced on the site? I understand, and it's been spoken about today, that a number of properties are now topped up and some are even advertised as actually already sold. How has this been allowed to take place when a number of conditions needed to be discharged for works to even begin on site have still not been discharged to date? What is happening in regards to planning enforcement? And we do need urgent answers on this. My second question: why has the developer not provided an up-to-date coal mining risk assessment or a recent report showing the locations and scale of the mine shafts they now understand to be on site following the recent intrusive surveys? How can we make a decision on the changes to the site layout, density and occupancy when this could soon change if more mine shafts are found or more continue to be in the wrong place? We don't have sight of any confirmed findings. We must have this in order for this condition to be amended and later discharged. The previous report from years ago, which the developer relied upon to get successful permission, is clearly insufficient, hence this application. So I believe we must request an up-to-date report of the situation on the ground urgently. I'm not comfortable with making decisions without the full facts.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you. Councillor Paul Johnson, you were next.
Chair. Just before I go into this, I just start to point out this is, I sat on this planning committee for 6 years now. And we, as a committee, all the people who've been on it, it's very professional. It's a very, very difficult, I've said this in other meetings, it's a very, very difficult committee to go and sit on, because you have to look the people in the face about who you make decisions about, whether they're for it or against it. Decisions we go make in this committee are not easy. But it's very, very easy to go and say, you've not done this right, you've not done this wrong. The number of times I've walked out of this committee and thought, did I do the right thing or the wrong thing? At the end of the day, I know that when I'm in the meeting, my conscience is clear. So having said that, I think it's important to understand how we work as on the committee. My question quite simply is this: in the course of any large or even medium or small developments, how unusual or frequent is it for an application for the variation of conditions, such as on section 73, of conditions for retrospective amendments for an approved scheme to happen? Is it frequent? How often does it happen, and how are they dealt with in the course of normal operations of the planning department? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'll bring the officer in to answer that one. Councillor Bithell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Planning and the whole planning process is not a popularity contest. If we were seeking popularity, we would never come on this committee in the first place. We have to administer planning requirements and planning needs and planning law as laid down, and we have to operate within those particular within that particular framework. And I think, you know, members of the public need to understand that, and indeed some members need to understand that, and perhaps they do understand it, which is possibly the reason they want to come on the committee. I'll leave that as it is. But, you know, this is not a rerun of the local development plan process. It's not a rerun of the original planning application for this site, which was decided last August 2025. That already has extant planning permission. This is
June.
Sorry?
June.
Sorry. June. Yeah, this is an application now, a full application for the variation of condition 2, the amendments to the approved scheme for the development of Gladstone Way / Ash Lane, Hawarden. The amendments are sought are minor relocation of a number of dwellings footprints following the completion of intrusive site investigations, which have revealed the exact position of old mine workings which were suspected to be there but could not be identified accurately. Some of these date back to the 18th and 19th centuries, as the report points out, and long before the Mining Remediation Authority had maps which we now rely on, which were only, I think, developed as a consequence of from the 1870s. So anything before then is probably guesswork to a large extent. And it's not until you start actually probing on the site that you can actually identify where they are. And again, that's not unusual in Flintshire. Flintshire was a mining area, the North Wales coalfield, and indeed there were mines peppered all over the area. And it's not unusual to find, as is one of the previous speakers mentioned, a hole suddenly appearing and somebody's drive and so on. It's very unfortunate when that happens, but it does happen, and it's a natural consequence of living in areas which have been intensively mine worked in the past. The MRA now has identified these sites more accurately now, and that has necessarily required a redesign of the site, not entirely, not wholly, but I think the applicant said in terms of I think 4 sites on the overall site, and that has pushed other particular properties in another direction, and so on and so forth as a consequence. It looks more than it is. When I looked at it initially, I thought minor relocations, minor amendments. It looked far more than that. But again, as has been pointed out by the applicant, this actually rejostling and repositioning of those properties has had an impact, a push and impact across the site. I've got a couple of questions in relation to the report. I was very concerned about the impact that this would have on the affordable element, which again was very, very important to us as a committee and an authority, and our local plan. We seek to obtain at least a large proportion of affordable homes. On this particular site, we're expecting 105 affordable homes out of the 300, a third of them, over a third affordable, but that is covered in the report, so I'm grateful for that. That was the first question I was going to ask. The other issue, under 713, it does state that almost all the plots pre-sited are within the site. Does this particular application now actually go beyond the site limits? And again, if that is the case, I'd like to know to what extent and What does that imply? Does that require a fresh application if it's going beyond the site boundary? The other point I wanted to raise really is in relation to the siting of a property requires the moving a dwelling slightly closer to the shared boundary to a distance of less than 1 metre and adequate interface distances. Does that still meet with our distance around dwelling requirements? I'd like an answer to that question too, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Biddle. Any? No hands up. Okay. Right. Okay. Can't see any more speakers at the minute. I'd like to ask.
There was just one other thing I wanted to mention in relation to the drainage and the aspect which has been played upon in this particular meeting. That's under a separate process. We have a SAB legislative process which does not involve this committee as a planning committee. It's dealt with quite separately, as I understand it, and I presume that these particular references to drainage issues and so on have been adequately dealt with under that particular process. I'd like clarification on that particular point. Thank you, for the benefit of all.
Thanks, Councillor Biddle. Quick question from me now. How many extra bedrooms is these changes going to make, and how many more residents is that going to take? So I think that was brought up before by a speaker, so I wanted to ask that. And the coal authority, obviously I was a coal merchant, wasn't I? So I mean, always interested in coal, although the mine workings is probably before my time. Is it not important to move these? If these plots were left in the same, is it a bit of a danger to residents who are going to buy these houses if these plots were left over some mine workings? So that's to me is a sensible thing to do. So the coal authority conditions should, I think I read it, I think it's from the town council there, community council. So these conditions should be replicated on any permission that's given today. Okay, so no more speakers, so I'm going to bring the officer back in then, James, to answer those questions. I didn't get them all from Councillor Biddle, there was a few there. But
Thank you, Chair. I'll actually probably move from most recent to the older ones, just for my own kind of to make sense of things. So, and also they're fairly easy to answer. So, in terms of the extra bedrooms, I think across the whole development there's 3 extra bedrooms, because you are seeing some plots changes to a kind of 4-bedroom from a 3-bedroom, but you also are seeing smaller, 2 bedrooms in place of 3 bedrooms. So actually, when you work the whole thing out, because the whole development of 300 houses is 3 extra bedrooms, which obviously, as anyone will know from their own house, people, you can't rely on full occupancy, but people will change. They'll add bedrooms, they'll remove bedrooms. So in terms of units is the important thing. There are no more units on site. So.
He's been removed, has he? There's a couple of screens, haven't there? I think Alan Miles is on one screen. I can't see him either.
Chair, if I can confirm, yeah, he's been removed from the meeting because his dispensation states that Councillor Wynne could speak at the above meeting about the issue, but should leave the meeting once he has spoken and before the matter was debated and voted on. And it also says the same applies to any written communications with officers. And there's a bit about,
I did know that, Nicola, but the question. Yeah, I was going to say that.
But it does also say, and also in relation to the above application and also any application which in the opinion of the monitoring officer was similar.
Right, okay. So he's right to be removed then, by the sound of it, if it applies to this application. I thought it was this application, I didn't realise it was the EULA one. He can watch it, online anyway, can't he? If he wants. Yeah, he had a dispensation because he went to the standards committee. I know that was extended. So I'll just check, is it definitely referring to this application?
It says, or applications, any application which in the opinion of the monitoring officer was similar. So it's whether you think this is a similar application.
The only similarity is because it's Castle Green Homes, isn't it? Not the same. Bring him back in, as far as I'm concerned.
He can't participate there.
He can't participate, no, but he can sit there and listen. That's all he can do. So that's right. Yeah, bring him back in. Yeah. I did question that in the beginning, and then I was told it was a ULO one. So I wondered where he. Well, I thought he might have been on another screen. Apologies,
Yeah,
councillor.
not to butt in. I have returned. Would you permit me to speak for a moment, if possible?
Not really. Apologies for. I didn't realise you'd gone, to be honest with you, because there's a few screens here. But yeah, there's no need to speak. I just apologise for you being removed because that was a mistake. I didn't realise it had happened.
I would like the opportunity to correct the record. I think it's there's been a number of things said that are untrue. So I would ask again for the opportunity to speak and just to briefly correct the record in regards to something quite important as such, a dispensation.
Well, no, we know the reason. We know why the dispensation was, so you don't really need to speak with.
Chair, it's in regards to a different site. It's got nothing to do with this.
You've had
Thank you. I have now. Yeah, thank you.
You can't. Thank you. Right, where were we? Lost my track now. James.
Thanks, sir. The other, I think, point you raised, Chair, was about the Coal Authority and how important it is to move. So, obviously, this was a condition on the original application that these matters would be investigated. That's been done now, and it wouldn't be an option to build over the exclusion zone. That brings a question. Councillor Parkhurst did just ask for the information for the distance shown. So it's a 12-metre area of exclusion that's been imposed. So that's the reason behind a lot of the movements. Right, so I lost my train of thoughts. Right, okay. So Councillor Biffle, a couple of the questions you raised. So the reference to almost all the plots within the site, that's unfortunately my bad grammar, to be honest. I've reread it, and it doesn't. All of the plots are within the site. There's nothing outside the site. I think what I should have put there is that the majority of plots that are affected are kind of deep within the site, so they're not on the site peripheries, they're internal. So it's generally the centre of the site that is affected. So I read that myself and thought, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make much sense, so I do apologise. So yeah, and you did mention about the drainage aspect. So yes, quite right, there's a SAB system for the surface water, and I'll come on to the condition 22, even though that's on the not directly relevant to this application, but I think it needs to be addressed because it's been raised by a number of people.
So with a SAB application, that's not subject to public approval as it is. It's not really revealed to the general public, is it? It's a very technical paper, as I understand it, is it not? Are they usually revealed to the general public, or?
Yeah, answer that.
I'm not actually. I don't actually know how the process works. That in that depth. I don't know if Matthew, do you know? Is it with the SAB approval? Is it subject to public? Is it open in the public domain? Is it subject to public consultation or anything?
I think there is an element. Sorry. Working. So working out. Yeah. There is an element of public engagement, but it's not in the same way as the planning application works.
Right. Back to it. So, Councillor Johnson just asked the question about Section 73 applications. They are very common, particularly on large applications, but even very small ones. I mean, it's a way of addressing specific points rather than opening up a whole application to apply again. It does also cover retrospective elements of it under Section 73A in the Act. So it's a common tool you'll see, hundreds of times in a year, and it's generally a delegated issue. It wouldn't normally come to before planning committee. Yeah, probably more. Yeah, hundreds and hundreds. Yeah. Potentially on every single application you could have one. So it's.
If I could just expand on that. So it's very common with larger schemes that once the developer is on site, for various reasons, not just the ones associated with this, that some minor amendments may be required. So there are three ways that you can deal with amendments to an application. So there's what we call non-material amendments. So that's when the changes are so very small that they're not material to any permission. And then you've got minor material applications, amendments, which are dealt with through Section 73, which is what this application is. And then you've got where the changes are so significant that they need an entirely new planning application. But as James says, we probably see hundreds of NMAs or MMAs throughout the year.
So variation and conditions in section 73 very rarely come. I don't know the one that's ever come to committee, to be fair.
Rarely
Very rarely. Thank you. Right, okay. So I think if I can kind of amalgamate, Councillor Wynne from Hawarden Community Council, Councillor Swash and Councillor Brockley, because they raised similar points. Councillor Wynne did mention about that this is, he's characterised this as a materially different matter than the previous application. It's material and it's acknowledged it's material, so it's not a non-material application. It is not material insofar as to be a different development. It is, as I said in my introduction, it is within the scope of section 73. They're individually fairly minor matters, and even cumulatively, they are minor. Materially different is a phrase you can throw around. It can mean a multitude of things, but I think factually correct is materially different, but it's not materially changing the character of the development. I think that's important to bear in mind. There's a few references to the accuracy of the mine report and how how can we rely on this. I think it's important to bear in mind the kind of chronology of what's happened here. On the original application, there was mining reports. The mining remediation authority, coal authority as was, were consulted. They looked at that information. They were happy with it, subject to conditions, and the conditions 24 and 25 remain on this site. Those conditions, condition 24 particularly, is what has required the further work that Councillor Green have done, which is identified the areas where the mine shafts maybe are located, and maybe that there had to be the changes. There was a reference to the fact that why is this inaccurate, the original information? These shafts are kind of 200-300 years old, so I think that as I think Councillor Bithell mentioned, the accuracy is not always spot on. It's 4 metre difference, as the gentleman Councillor Green stated. So that was what the intrusive investigations required by condition 24 had to check prior to any building work being done, just to double check the kind of the original surveys and everything that were kind of part of the original permission. So the fact that mining remediation authority, who is the statutory authority who look at coal mining legacy in this country, they're happy with the details, and I think that should give you confidence, the planning committee, that the information submitted is accurate, it's appropriate, and the conditions do remain on site, do remain on the consent. So that should give people confidence. And that also leads me to a couple of comments made by I think all the individuals here that mentioned that there were outstanding conditions, and in my view there are no outstanding conditions that require prior determination discharge before development can start. It was all sorted. If there's a couple of conditions that mention no development shall start, but then if you read the condition, that doesn't require discharge before any work can start. That refers back to information submitted at the time, and they remain on the permission to give that safeguarding. So condition 24 and 25 haven't been discharged in the way others have, but they have been met. So there's no outstanding issues there. Condition 22, which I said is kind of outside the scope of this application, but it has been mentioned, so I think it's important to again touch upon that. That's partially discharged because the final discharge can't come until the work's been completed and the connection point is agreed with Welsh Water and undertaken. So basically that will be the end of that process. From the purposes of the planning considerations, the HMA came in as part of application 76925, and it was put on the public register at that time. And that's an agreement between Welsh Water and the developer to identify the connection point, which has been done, which is the first part of the condition. And then, as I said, the work will be completed, and at such a time as the work's completed, it will be fully discharged. So there's no outstanding information in terms of the Welsh Water connection point. So I'd just be very cautious of where people are throwing around accusations that there are outstanding conditions, because there aren't, as far as I'm concerned, on this application. So hopefully that kind of clears matters up. And I think that's everything. I'll just double check while I've got the mic.
I don't think the officers responded to the question on.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise. My computer went awry, and I've missed most of the debate on this. I don't know what happened, but I had to go through updates and everything. So I'm back in the meeting now.
Councillor Bithell.
I don't think the officers responded to my question regarding plot 32. That states that the plot's substitution requires moving the dwelling slightly closer to the shared boundary by less than a metre. Does that still comply with our space around dwellings rule, please?
Sorry, Councillor Bithell. Yeah, I did miss that. Yeah, yes, it does. Yeah, as I said, it's a minor. It is moving slightly closer to the shared boundary, whereas I think every other plot doesn't do that. But it's the matter of centimetres, and the distances in accordance with SB Gen 2 are retained. So there's no concern over that plot.
Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to query, as I believe there's some houses already sold. Can I ask how many houses has already been sold? And what are they, 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses or? That's my question, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that question, but it's, that's like retrospective, isn't it? It's not really relevant to the condition 2. Did you want to just? Probably don't know the answer to that anyway.
I don't have that information. It's kind of outside the scope of the application.
Yeah.
And the planning. It was, but it's not a planning issue as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor.
So it doesn't matter, they can sell whatever they want.
It's retrospective. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, you're obviously going to be asking for a resolution to come forward. Just so that I am clear, before that comes forward, we have on 2.0 a recommendation to grant planning permission subject to the following. Does that mean that this would abrogate the original planning permission that was given? That's the first question. And the second one would be, what would the consequences of refusal be? Because if you talked about this as a section 73 and what you were saying, these are coming along all the time, etc., etc. So I'm just wondering, could you explain what happens if this is turned down by this committee? Do we go back to the original planning permission that was given? Where does that go and leave us? I'd like some clarification.
I'll just bring Matthew in to answer that.
Okay, thank you, through you, Chair. So the first question is that the permission would be granted subject to the conditions, and those conditions have carried over from the original permission that was granted last year. What this application does is seek to vary condition 2. So condition 2 is the only one that we're looking to vary. All of the other conditions remain on the original permission and will sit alongside this. I think James did allude to it in his original presentation when he says you can't chop and change, you've got to do one or the other. So if they go with this one, then those conditions that were originally attached to the original permission have been carried over to this one. But as James has also said, and I think there's been some discussion and maybe some confusion, that the developers have started on site before, because these conditions say no development has commenced, no development should commence, but those conditions have already been discharged. So it's not that the developer is on site in breach of any of those conditions, they've already been discharged. In terms of the consequences of not approving this one, they can fall back to the original consent. So that doesn't mean refusing this means that the development goes away. They still got permission for the 300. Also, if this was to be appealed, I think we would really struggle to defend this because, as James has says, the changes to this application compared to what's previously been approved are so very minor. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, all the questions. Councillor Brown, yeah? You have another question?
Oh, not a question. No, I was waiting for you to ask for a proposal.
Okay, if there's any more questions now from members? No? Okay. Well, can I ask for a proposition then, please?
Yeah.
Councillor Brown was just in front of you. Councillor
Okay, thank you. I believe that we should at the very least defer this application to allow the developer to come back with the important details raised previously by myself. We cannot take the chances with this, given the safety risk to residents, but especially when the site has already been squeezed and squeezed upwards in terms of more and more properties at each and every term before this committee has even discussed it, or even a higher density and an even higher occupancy are just not acceptable under any circumstances, and not least for something that we were led to believe that developer had proper confirmation on years ago with regards to mine shafts on the site. Clearly, the investigations, the intrusive investigations were done in 2019, and that hasn't been accurate. So I don't believe that we have the full facts and that we should not make a decision on this this afternoon, and that I will propose deferral, and I would like a recorded vote.
Can we have an...
Second.
Okay, Councillor Ellis seconded that. So reasons for deferment are what?
We don't have accurate information.
Accurate information for...
Mine shafts.
So the developer can continue building on the site they are already, because this is going to stop them doing that. Okay, if that's what you want to do, Councillor Ellis seconded that. Anybody want to speak on the deferment? Okay. Move to the vote for the deferment, then. Yeah, move to vote. All in favour of... those in favour of a recorded vote, can they please stand, please? Stand, yeah.
And Carol as well.
So that's 3. I'm told that we need 2/3 of the committee. Yeah, got 3. I'm told that we need 2/3 of the committee to stand to have a recorded vote, I'm afraid.
Could we bring the Democratic Services?
Chair, it's a quarter you're required to stand for or to indicate for a recorded vote.
Also, so 3 is not enough, is it? Just committee 17.
It's a quarter of those present in the room. Or in committee. I can run it reference the comments, but I'm sure it's a quarter that are present. So, yeah.
Okay, so that recorded vote. So we'll vote. Hands up, please, for the deferment. Four. Those against deferment. Okay, so that proposition is lost. Can I have another proposition, please? Councillor Bithell.
Can I move the recommendation for approval, subject to the conditions applied? Thank you, Chair.
Please, for Councillor Bithell. Councillor Gladys Healy, second. Okay. Go with hands for approval of the officer's recommendation. Nine. Those against?
I'd like to be recorded as against, please.
Okay.
Got any abstentions?
I haven't done that yet.
4 against.
4 against. Can you record Councillor Brown's name? Any abstentions? Councillor Bibby, Councillor Parkhurst abstain. Okay, so that recommendation is approved. Thank you very much. That's we'll close the meeting. If members can just members of the committee stay behind to David would like to talk about appeals. Thank you.
Hello, Chair. Sorry, I'm going to have to leave due to the time this has taken. I've got an appointment.
Okay, Helen. Carol, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. If David could just drop me an email, I'd be grateful. But I've got. Sorry.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.